Yeah, so we're back with another strut job. In this video, like I said in the previous one, maybe I'll leave a link in this description too, so you can go back to that one. But it's a different style. You got the upper control arm right there with the steering knuckle that goes up to it. So the way to design this strut is totally different from the other one. As you can see, it mounts to the lower control arm and kind of like a fork style. So it's a little more in depth, more steps to do than a normal strut job. So first here, you see, because they, like I said in the other video, there's a spot right there on the strut where the sway bar link mounts to. So the first step on this one is taking that sway bar link off. Now, this is on a pretty new Durango. It had like a little damage to it, like it might have gotten an accident or something. The strut was kind of bent. So I didn't recommend the sway bar links. Plus, this is at my job, and my job, they try to do things a little cost efficient. So all I did was the strut. Like they don't even get the whole quick strut. They got me the strut, and I had to dismount the spring, the coil spring from this strut, and put it on there. I wasn't able to get that in the video. Maybe next time I'll just make a video for that alone. But as you can see, I take the bolt off at the bottom for the control arm, and then I move on top to get the other three bolts off. And now that we got those off, I raised the car up. See, now this strut, I was glad I did it at the job because I had a lift. So it made it a little more easier. Doing this on the ground would be a little bit of a headache, but it can still be done. So next I go and I remove the upper ball joint from the knuckle and try to free it up. You're gonna want to get as much room as possible on this kind of job. So you're gonna see me take off the upper ball joint. I'm also gonna take the brake caliper off with the bracket. Just free it up as much as possible to not have anything restricting it from moving, because you want to get as much space as possible. I'm also, after I get the brakes off, you'll see I take the tie rod out of the knuckle also. Just in a second here, you'll see me hang up the caliper, and then I'm going to take the tie rod off. But yeah, like I said, it's quite a few more steps than the other common style that I did on that forward edge. So now I'm going to have to, like I said, you want to get as much freedom as possible, so you got to take the axle out. And I'm trying to push it through the knuckle. I use a little rubber mallet because I don't want to damage the end to that axle. Get a little extension. Not just use what I had right there. I got an extension in my socket to my ratchet and did it. But you could use a little chisel or something. Well, not a chisel, but maybe like a punch or something. And now you see I'm taking the axle out. So once I pop the axle out, I'm able to pull it through. And honestly, I tried to get this off without removing the axle, but I just couldn't get enough clearance. So I had to take it out. And then right here is where I went and installed the new strut with the spring. And now just like in the other video or just any job, once you install, it's just the reverse of the removal. So here you go. You see I put the strut up there, place it into place, and then I slide the axle in to the spot it's supposed to be. Make sure I got that strut together, so I line it up in the hose. I had to use a little help here because this is a bigger vehicle, so I kind of got one of my coworkers to come and screw in the bolt up top while I held it in place on the bottom. As as you can see here. Then, you know, I left it a little loose because you want to be able to move it around a little bit while you do the rest of the job. So now, you know, back to putting the axle all the way in. Make sure that was seated into the transmission, differential, whatever it goes into, whatever vehicle you're working on. Make sure it's seated in there right. Just had a little washer on there. Just want to make sure you put all the parts back that you got off too. So I get the axle back into the spindle. I get the tie rod onto the spindle. Then tighten up the tie rod right away. Just want to make sure it was in there holding. And then right here, I believe I moved on to the brake caliper. Put that in. Oh no, you know what? I put the bottom bolt for the strut in first. Then put the sway bar link in. I have to use one of those jacks to help me bolt in the upper control arm. There's things I had at my disposal, or because it's at the job, it makes it a little easier, like I said. So I get that in and tighten that up just so it holds in place. And then, you know, once I'm able to get it lower, I'll go ahead and tighten it all the way up. And I'll go on to the sway bar link, put that bolt in, trying to get it to go through. And then, you know, after this, I put the brake caliper on, went back up top, tightened those bolts from the strut tower. You know, it's not too difficult. It just requires a couple more steps than the average strut job, like I said. Just want to make sure I like to use Loctite. Just so nothing comes loose. You know, Loctite in the places I can, like right there on the sway bar link bolt, and I also use them on the brake caliper, the bracket bolts, just to make sure they don't come loose and cause any damage or harm to the person driving the vehicle. Put the axle nut back on right there, as you see. Now you see I'm putting the brake caliper back on there. You know, I'm a little old-fashioned. Sometimes I like to use a wrench and manually tighten the thing so I can know how tight it is. You know, some people I see, they use a gun. You use a gun. Sometimes I use a gun to tighten it. Then I get the wrench or the ratchet and make sure it's tight. So, you know, whichever way you're most comfortable with and you think is the safest in whatever you do, if you got that experience, you know what's best. So now you see I'm tightening up the strut, the bolts in the strut tower. Then I tighten up that tie rod. I don't know if you can hear the neighbor's dog barking. You gotta excuse them. But and then I put the wheel on. You tighten the wheel up, and you know I like to also torque that axle nut so you can see I got the cap in the middle of the rim out. So once I get the car on the ground, I can torque it with my torque wrench to the spec. Different cars have different specs. You know, you just look up the specs. I've seen some that are like 180. I've seen some that are 220 foot-pounds. So, you know, just look the spec up, whatever car it is you're working on at the time, and make sure you tighten it. Don't want that coming off. Cause damage to the hub and the axle. And that's it, you see? So, hope you enjoyed the video. Y'all have a good one.